This is a discussion of Emily Dickinson's poem, I Taste a Liquor Never Brewed. I will display the text of the poem and play a recording of Alexandra O'Connor reading it. Then I will present my commentary on the poem. After my commentary, I will play a recording of the poem read by Julie Harris. At the very end, I will display the references to the scholarly works I have mentioned in the commentary.
I taste a liquor never brewed, from tankards scooped in pearl. Not all the vats upon the Rhine yield such an alcohol. Inebriate of air am I, and debauchee of dew, reeling through endless summer days from inns of molten blue. When landlords turn the drunken bee out of the foxglove's door, when butterflies renounce their drams, I shall but drink the more. Till seraphs swing their snowy hats, and saints to windows run, to see the little tippler leaning against the sun.
Dickinson grew up during what was later called America's Second Great Awakening. This was a religious revival movement. It took place all over the United States, but the center of it was in western New York along the Erie Canal, not far from Amherst, Massachusetts, where Dickinson lived. There were so many camp revivals and itinerant preachers in this area that it became known as the burned-over region because so much religious fervor was ignited there. In school, the teenage Dickinson refused to make a public declaration of her religious rebirth. After spending a year at the Mount Holyoke Female Seminary, Dickinson was classified as, quote, left out of Christ and, quote, without hope, according to Sidney McLean. In the opening scene of Terence Davies' film A Quiet Passion, a teacher publicly dresses down the young Dickinson for not proclaiming her religious rebirth. Something like this might actually have happened. Virtually everyone in Amherst would have proclaimed themselves reborn. Her adulterous brother carried a card in his wallet attesting to his religious rebirth. But Dickinson never joined a church. Dickinson's heritage was the intense Calvinism of her ancestors. Her poetry is filled with biblical allusions. The rhythms of her poems are based on church hymns, and in some poems she does adopt a religious attitude toward mortality. But in general, she had little use for the religion of either her ancestors or her contemporaries. The Second Great Awakening gave rise to the anti-slavery movement, the women's suffrage movement, the public education movement, the prison reform movement, the asylum reform movement, and, the subject of this poem, the temperance movement. Early 19th century Americans consumed 3 to 6 times more alcohol than we do today. Dickinson's father was a militant prohibitionist, although he served champagne and sherry at home, according to John Cody. Landlords kept inns, line 8, where drams, line 11, of whiskey were served. A dram is a shot glass of strong liquor. Another word for dram is draught, as in the section of a poem by Emerson discussed later. According to David Reynolds, Dickinson would have been familiar with temperance stories. One popular image was of a landlord throwing a drunken customer out into the street where the drunkard holds onto a lamppost, the scornful implication being that drunkards are of no value except to hold up lampposts. In Dickinson's poem, saints and seraphs, who are in heaven's inn, look out the windows to see Dickinson, the little tippler, holding up the sun. According to Anderson, Dickinson's poem was a parody of Bacchus by Ralph Waldo Emerson, a prominent transcendentalist, in which Emerson links wine to all creation. That I, intoxicated, and by the draught assimilated, may float at pleasure through all natures, the bird language rightly spell, and that which roses say so well. If ever you want a demonstration of the greatness of Dickinson's poem, compare it with this one by Emerson.
I taste a liquor never brewed, from tankards scooped in pearl. Not all the vats upon the Rhine yield such an alcohol. Inebriate of air am I, and debauchee of dew, reeling through endless summer days from inns of molten blue. When landlords turn the drunken bee out of the foxglove's door, when butterflies renounce their drams, I shall but drink the more, till seraphs swing their snowy hats and saints to windows run, to see the little tippler leaning against the sun.